Wildlife management, at its very best, is conducted by local agencies. It's guided by biologists and sound research, and it has input from a well-informed public. But this is probably not what's going to happen in Colorado this November. There's a good chance that this fall there will be a ballot initiative that would ban mountain lion hunting and bobcat hunting in the state. This is despite the fact that the state wildlife agency is not pushing for a hunting ban. Now, if you followed the politics around anti-hunting legislation, you know that ballot initiatives like this one are a common way for hunters to lose opportunity. Essentially what happens is an animal wellness group gathers signatures for a measure to ban a certain type of hunting. And once they have enough signatures supporting their ban, it goes onto the ballot for residents to vote on. And at that point, all bets are off. I'm Editor-in-Chief Alex Robinson, and today on the podcast, I'm talking to Brian Lynn from the Sportsmen's Alliance. Lynn's organization works to defeat these types of initiatives wherever they crop up. And according to him, these ballot measures to ban specific types of hunts are actually not one-off grassroots efforts. Instead, they are part of a more organized attempt to restrict hunting and alter wildlife management as we know it. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Brian. Before we get into all of this, I think it's important for you to just explain, what you do, first of all, for Sportsmen's Alliance, and also what your organization's job kind of key function is.
Yeah, you bet. And thanks for having me on, Alex. The Sportsmen's Alliance is a nonprofit advocacy organization that started in 1977-78. Depending when you want to count that day. And we're born out of the need to protect trapping in Ohio. It was under attack. That's when the animal rights movement really came into and politicized the topic and started to try to ban hunting, trapping, whatever, through the ballot initiative process. And they viewed Ohio as kind of a linchpin. If they could ban trapping there, they could take it to other states. So they came in, got it on the ballot, and then just a bunch of good old boys, wildlife professionals, business owners, everybody who has a stake in trapping and hunting in Ohio came together, fundraised, and they fought this ballot initiative with rod and gun clubs and everybody else and getting the word out, and they defeated it. And then everybody just went back to work, went back to their day jobs. And then they started getting calls. The next call was from California, of course, right? Hey, they're trying to do this out here. And then there was a couple other states that called, like, how did you defeat them? And so the guys who did it quickly saw there was a need for this. They helped out in these other states, stopped it in California, actually, back then. And they created what was called the Wildlife Legislative Fund of America. And that's kind of the genesis. We started off as a ballot initiative organization just to protect hunting in Ohio. And now we help out in ballot initiatives. We'll run campaigns. We'll help out with messaging or whatever. We work in all 50 state legislatures. And so every session, this last session, we monitored 1,500 bills that impacted hunting, fishing, trapping, wildlife commissions, whatever, in some way, and sent like 400 alerts. So I do the ballot initiatives, legislative in all 50 states, and we work in state and federal court. And those are the big three kind of branches where we're at advocacy-wise. We also do research that informs wildlife agencies, the public, legislatures, and educates them on these topics. And we also have a high school education program that teaches science through the North American model. And it's pretty cool. It's brand new, but that one's pretty cool. But our big work that we're doing and why we're here today is our advocacy work. And we exist to protect hunters and hunting in the North American model.
Yeah. And your job within all of this, explain that part.
And as you know, I came up in the ranks through the media side of things at Outdoor Life and ESPN Outdoors, and then freelance writer and everything. So about 10 years ago, I came on as the vice president of marketing and communications. So pretty much all outward facing media that you see goes through my department, from our website to social media to education campaigns to doing podcasts and giving quotes to folks like you, and just trying to disseminate this information and get it out there so people know what's going on. Our hunters and your readers know what's going on, and we can better protect hunting that way. So pretty much everything that you see that Sportsmen's Alliance goes through me at some point.
Okay. So your organization was founded to help defeat hunting ban ballot initiatives. And your job is to communicate the message around defeating hunting ban ballot initiatives. So you are the guy. You're like the perfect guy to explain what we have going on in this moment. No pressure, Brian. But you are the man. You are the man for this conversation.
For the most part, there are some really smart people that are, in our government affairs team that, they look through thousands of pages of stuff and do all the data analysis. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And they give me some lawyer type answer. And I'm like, I translate from their high end speak to me as a redneck. And like, here's how it goes. Here's what this means actually to you. So yes.
Perfect. Well, that's what I want anyway. And let's kind of dig into it then. So specifically, ballot initiatives. At this point, everyone kind of understands functionally how these things work. But maybe let's start on where they come from in the first place. Like how does these petitions even come up?
Yeah, that is a great question, and one that I get frustrated with as I watch a lot of media, especially mainstream media. They couch these as conservationists in the state, and that's a pet peeve of mine when they conflate conservation with preservation. Every time I see that in a headline, and mainstream media does it all the time, calls Humane Society of the United States, Center for Biological Diversity, Mountain Lion Foundation, calls all these groups conservationists. They're preservationists. They don't want any use. They want them left alone. But, everybody thinks this is a grassroots thing that citizens just one day got up and said, we need to stop mountain lion hunting in Colorado or bear hunting in Maine. The citizens of these states are not doing that. This is not a citizen-driven initiative, even though that's what the process is. It is your out-of-state groups, those that I just mentioned, especially the Humane Society of the United States. Right now in Colorado is the Animal Wellness Action Group that is Wayne Pacelli's group, who used to be the head of the Humane Society of the United States, Mountain Lion Foundation, CBD, all these groups, national groups out of DC and New York and Los Angeles, they're the ones behind this. Now they have somebody in the state who works for them, who is the chapter person or the state coordinator, and they're the ones who file it. And okay, they live in the state, so I guess they're a citizen and they have the right to file this petition. But it's all ginned up and started and strategized in DC or New York or LA, wherever these big organizations are headquartered. It's not a grassroots rising up. It's a coordinated attack.
Yeah. So the energy, maybe let's put it this way, like the energy and resources start out of state, and then they find people in a state that they want to target to kind of do the work of the petition. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Okay. All right. So let's just kind of use Colorado as an example, because that's the topic in the news now, or that's the state in the news now. Just kind of generally speaking, these big out-of-state organizations, they've kind of identified a place that they want to attack. They've identified a type of hunting or species that they want to target. How do they go about getting signatures? The idea of just going into a state where, as you said, most of these folks are not really from, this topic of mountain lion hunting probably isn't on the top of minds for a lot of Colorado residents who are, worried about all other types of things going into this election. How do they get signatures for this petition?
Yeah. So you have your state coordinator that's there, and in Colorado, that's Samantha Bruger. who used to live here in Washington and was the one who really pushed for the spring bear hunting ban here. She then went to Animal Wellness Action, and she's the one who filed it with the Secretary of State. She's the state coordinator for Animal Wellness Action for Colorado, and then they appointed her as the executive director of Cats Aren't Trophies, which is just a front group. It's a front group for them. And then the other groups, Mountain Lion Foundation and whatever, tag along. And so she filed it, and then she has a committee. I mean, we all know there's anti-hunters, and they make up 5 to 10% of the population, right? So you got your Denver folks and whatever else. You get a committee together. She gets a committee together, and we have to get signature gatherers. So they get volunteers who like-minded, want to see this happen. And they go out and just start knocking on doors and setting up at your local, Kroger or Safeway or whatever, and asking people to sign, and not always being forthright in what it does. Like this, the Colorado one has lynx on there. They're telling everybody lynx are endangered, which they are, but then that they're being killed, as bycatch with bobcats, beating bobcat traps or whatever, which isn't true. So they really gin up the emotion, ask for signatures, so people just sign. Sounds reasonable to a lot of non-hunters or people who, are in Denver or Phoenix or Portland or wherever. Sounds great to them. So they just start gathering signatures. At some point, they'll look at it and go, okay, we're on track or we're not on track to make our threshold by the date. And so they'll bring in professional signature gatherers. There's companies that will send a team out to start canvassing the area and setting up in those strategic locations, zoos and whatever else, to gather these signatures, and then they get paid by the signature. At one point, I think the Colorado one was like $21 a signature, but then they lowered it down and were able to do it like $5 to $7 range, I believe is what you guys reported. And so, the cheaper you can get it, obviously, the more cost effective it is. But these people get paid by the signature. And so they are out there working their butts off 8, 10 hours, whatever a day, gathering these signatures, trying to get it to qualify to hit the threshold that's needed in that state.
Yeah. And if I'm just sort of a well-meaning person who lives in Denver and I'm going to the zoo with my kids, and someone, some nice person comes up to me and is like, hey, do you want to stop the mistreatment of wild cats in Colorado and protect endangered species? I might be like, okay, yeah, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Having no understanding of the issues.
Yeah, no, it's a great sell. It's an easy sell to those who don't understand it, and even some outdoorsmen that are more, fly fishing or fishing in general and don't understand or don't participate in predator hunting in particular. And then they use the whole, idea that everybody, it's like close to 80%, something like that people support hunting as a wildlife management tool if they're being used for food. This campaign in Colorado is a perfect example. They're telling people that rarely do they ever eat cats and mountain lions. And I mean, people that I've talked to about this stuff who don't know anything about it are like, oh, you can eat a mountain lion? They're completely surprised by it. And so that's a quick, easy sell that, yeah, this is just trophy hunting. And we all know what happens when you put trophy in front of hunting. It goes from a 75, 80% acceptance down to sub 30%. And so they throw that in there. In Colorado, that was a big push at the beginning. They wanted to call it trophy hunting, ban trophy hunting, entitle it. And the groups there went to war and got it so they couldn't do that. But that's still the basic pitch is trophies, not eaten, not used, and cats, big predators and stuff. So, and all that works against us and seems reasonable to those who don't know anything about this world.
And just to be clear, mountain lions, for people who hunt them, mountain lions are eaten all the time, and the meat is fantastic. And that is not a shocking thing to folks who are really spun up in the big game hunting world. But even for just kind of the general outdoorsman, that could be surprising to know that, yeah, actually mountain lion meat is really good and people eat it all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Going along with what you're saying, in Colorado and just historically, is that why these groups often target predator hunting? Because it's just a more complicated message for us, the hunters, to explain what we're doing, why it's ethical, why it's legit, why it's, good wildlife management. Like most people can understand, oh yeah, people have to hunt deer because if we didn't hunt deer, there'd be too many and I'd hit them with my car, they'd eat my garden or whatever. But most people have never seen a mountain lion and they're like, well, why do you need to hunt mountain lions? That doesn't seem like a problem. So, the organizations, they just go around targeting predator hunting in various states.
Yeah, predator hunting plays there's two different points that they can win on. One is exactly what you said, and the other one's rewilding. So, yeah, it's an easy sell. People don't see, mountain lions. Like if you see a mountain lion, there's something wrong. They're the ghosts of the forest. Right. If they're strolling through your yard, you might have too many mountain lions in the area. I was having this conversation with my cousin who is, from the Seattle area. And I'm like, bro, it's like you're in the woods and you got this great area and you're in the cafeteria and there's lots of deer. Well, it's just like when you were a freshman in high school, you go and you try to sit with the cheerleaders, the senior cheerleaders, you're going to get your butt kicked by the football team. So you go over here. Well, that's what these young mountain lions are doing. They're getting their butt kicked by the older, bigger toms and to protect food, territory, mating rights. So they're going where the pickings are much easier and they're less likely to get their butt kicked. They're heading to the library instead of the cafeteria, i.e. somebody's backyard to pick off their pooch. And so it's an easy sell because they don't see them. They're not impacted by them. It's believable. It makes sense. It resonates. So they can win on that. We have a harder time messaging saying, yeah, no, the mountain lion populations that you never see are actually out of whack, and we have a ton of them. It's a hard sell. It's a hard convince. And then we have to, it's kind of a microcosm of our entire problem as a community is they have a quick emotional pitch, elevator pitch, or just headline that works, where we have to explain the science and this whole model and history. And by the time you get about 3 sentences into it, somebody's eyes just start glazing over. And they're like, okay, I just want to go drink my beer over here at the barbecue. And so that doesn't work. But then the other piece is the rewilding. So if they can protect the predators, your mountain lions, your bobcats, your coyotes, your wolves, your black bears, your grizzly bears, lynx, then they want to it starts at the top. And they want the predators on the landscape to control that biological surplus that we get to hunt and to take that out. And then the Fish and Game, their only recourse is to limit tags for hunters. And we've seen this happen in Washington and literally had commissioners say it. And so that accomplishes their goal. So if they can get rewilding established and protect all the predators, then there is no need for the hunters, except when the predators get too many and then the state has to go in and kill them, which is another whole topic.
And now there's no funding for state natural wildlife resources. But, putting those issues aside, yes, if you don't get into the details of it, it sounds good. We'll have more predators on the landscape. They will, they'll kill the surplus deer and elk so that, nature will all be in balance. And that all sounds great to someone who doesn't know the details of wildlife resource funding, public lands management, predator management, predator prey cycles.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want to get into the nuances of that, then the other story sounds great.
Easy pitch, easy sell. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we got those things working against us. But I think we should talk about, from a wildlife management and conservation standpoint. And maybe let's start from the philosophical standpoint first. Let's start big and then narrow it down. From a wildlife management standpoint, why are these ballot initiatives so problematic?
Well, for exactly the reasons we just said. If they can get it qualified, historically, pretty much what you need, whichever side spends the most money, wins. And our community There's people and organizations and whatever who do have a lot of money, but not like they do. I mean, Humane Society of the United States has like a $200 million budget. And when you combine the top 5 or 8, the whole thing is almost $1 billion that they have discretionary income. Nobody in our organization or our community has that kind of money to throw into a ballot initiative. And that's what it comes down to. Basically, you're looking at, defending and doing airtime buys for your big metropolitan areas. So you got your, in Denver, Colorado Springs, in Arizona, where we saw a wildcat ban a few years ago, Phoenix. You got to win Phoenix. That's it. That's all you really have to win. Montana, a few years before that, for trapping on public lands. You got Missoula, Helena, and Bozeman area that you have to win. And Bozeman was the big one, and so it comes down to airtime buys.
Let me slow you down here for a second, because that's like the next step, right? The airtime buy, you're talking about after it gets on the ballot, right? They have enough signatures now for it to go onto the ballot. Now it's like any other political campaign.
Yep.
Where you have to spend money, you have to do commercials, you have to have the airtime buys, the signs on the highway, and it's basically just, big money politics of how to get votes now.
Yep.
So what you're saying is when it gets that far, now we have problems because we can't spend as much as they can.
Yeah. In general, yeah, that's what happens. I mean, the main ballot initiative to end bear hunting, and we ran that campaign, I think was the first time that we outspent them, if I'm remembering correctly. And it was like 2.7 to 2.5 million that was spent on that campaign. Otherwise, we're usually the underdogs, and it all comes down to proper messaging. So just like you said, and it's ran just like a political campaign. You got to go out there and do your polling, and that's 30,000 to 75,000. You have to find out what the message is in that polling. Then you have to do the creative and the targeting to who those people are. Does that message, is it going out to men? Is it going out to women, mothers? What age group? What demographics? And then you target that message and hit it home. And you want them to be thinking about that message when they go into the voting booth. It's not like, oh, we're going to do an education campaign and teach everybody about no, we just want to change their mind for the moment that they are 12-hour period that they're pulling that lever and making a vote. That's when we do it. But then the messaging gets really expensive. That's expensive to begin with. If it's just a cut and dry, you throw early voting into the mix, and that backs up your timeline and adds to the messaging duration that you have to do. You look at someplace like Arizona where you have to do bilingual, and you want to get both. So then that doubles your messaging spend. And so it gets real expensive real quick. And that's where our community has a real big problem keeping up. In that once you identify the messaging, it's just pure funding to fight these things.
We'll be right back after the break. Can I bring up a really naive, but I also think true reason why this is problematic?
Sure.
It's because this isn't how wildlife management is supposed to be done.
Exactly. But those are the political processes, and the fish and game departments are part of a political process. And so, yeah, that's, there's some states that do it right. Utah's a great example where you have to have 2/3 for any wildlife, 2/3 of a vote. Or I can't remember where it's at, that you have to have a certain percentage from every county. It's not a pure popular vote. It's either a supermajority vote or representative percentages from every county to qualify and or to pass. And now that makes a whole lot more sense than just a pure popular vote. Like, if Colorado had that, wolves never would have been reintroduced, because it was like a percentage point, 2 percentage points at most. And so, that's your Denver and Colorado Springs right there. That's it. So if every state had at least that kind of a threshold, we'd be in a better shape. But Washington, Colorado, some of these states are just pure popular vote, 51% or 50.1%, and it passes. Regardless of science, regardless of facts, regardless of reality, their messaging and that vote carries weight forever.
Because just to be super clear, it's not the state agencies who are like, oh, we need to change this.
No, and if it was, and if there was science and data behind it, I think most sportsmen are like, yeah, close that to hunting or whatever for how many years until the population rebounds. I mean, we do that all the time with, deer and elk and everything else, and even mountain lions and bears. Hey, point restrictions over here, or no doe seasons in these areas. Oh, we're above, the goal, population goals for this area, so let's increase, doe harvests. We do that all the time. Then they take it away. Once it drops and falls in line, they take it away. We really don't complain about that too much. There might be a little bit, but by and large, we understand that, yeah, they're trying to keep this stuff within a range.
So from a strategy standpoint, for these organizations that are looking at this across the country, looking at these ballot initiative hunting bans, it's like you'd want to target states that have voting laws that are favorable to you, right? Where you just need a majority. You don't have to win county by county or win a supermajority or anything. And then you'd also want to target states that have large metropolitan areas that will have a lot of people who aren't necessarily spun up on the issue that you're trying to target. Is that true?
Yep, that's a perfect equation right there. Yep, that's exactly what they want. And probably, to even make it even simpler, boiling it down to red and blue states, and there's the purple ones in there too. But, Washington, they can pass pretty much anything they want here in my home state. And they have, since 1996, they've been reducing ballots. And so you already have that I-5 corridor, these large metropolitan areas. People aren't involved in it. Large, tech type places, big cities, and they can pretty much do what they want. That would be the perfect storm.
Yeah. In your mind, what states out there, obviously Colorado, but what states out there now are should hunters kind of be like, I need to perk up and listen to this. They're talking about me right now. What kind of states are we talking about here?
A lot of your blue and purple states, and the coasts, Washington, Oregon, California, obviously Colorado, the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, all of those actually, probably down through Virginia, that northeast side, and then kind of those Great Lakes states that you see, where we've been battling for wolves for years. Your Minnesota, Wisconsins with those big, the cities there, the Minneapolis and stuff, and those are big states. But really, it can hit just about anywhere. If you have a big metropolitan area that dominates, and there isn't a super strong history or tradition with hunting outside, that's part of kind of the state's ethos, they have susceptibility, just for the pure voting standpoint of, that metropolitan area that can dominate.
All right. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, that I'm listening to this and I am a deer hunter in Mississippi. Like, no one's coming to my state to pass a ballot initiative, an anti-hunting ballot initiative. No chance in hell. Why should I care about this?
Well, one, because at some point they might. Two, if a bunch of states do it and they start to get a weighted piece because this is part of their marketing ploy, only 8 states in the entire country allow hounding with black bears and something like that. Then they use that as a psychological and legal leverage and reason for advancing legislation. So this is where, our organization works hand in hand between these different pieces, that now they'll attack at the legislative level to come after it, or they will try to do it at the federal level, if they can. And we're seeing more and more of the federalization of wildlife, under the Biden administration, but that's a whole nother topic. And so, eventually they could either get there, with your state, if it swings anyway, it swings more towards the blue with, kind of this idea, or gets super urbanized, they could do it. They could do it legislatively, or if your neighboring states are protecting a whole bunch of critters, eventually those cats, bears, lions, wolves, whatever else are going to spread out, and they're going to be coming where your deer are. they're going to be like, hey, things are getting scarce here. We need to disperse. And look, there's a whole buffet over there. Let's go. And they'll start moving that way. So it all interconnects eventually, and it may take a while, but nobody is completely immune.
Yeah. Take that to heart, Mississippi deer hunters. You should keep listening. You should keep caring about this. Is there anything that hunters can do against this cycle and this machine? And don't just say join the Sportsmen's Alliance.
Well, join the Sportsmen's Alliance. But, I mean, it is tough with ballot initiatives because, as we touched on, there's not really a process to stop it. They introduce something into legislation, we can stop it. We can step up and voice and, do email campaigns and calls and whatever else and pull other pressure points on these politicians. When it comes to the ballot initiatives, anybody can, in the states where they can do it, they can introduce it, form the committee, start working on it. And if they can get it past the different hurdles of naming and description and whatever, then it's just a matter of gathering the signatures. So there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do besides joining groups that work on this stuff. When a ballot does hit, giving money, when they're gathering signatures, trying to educate people that are, going to be signing this or could be signing this. But the ballot machine is, it's its own beast, and it's hard to stop, and it's about funding, and it just, there's not a whole heck of a lot we can do as individuals to stop it. The only thing that we have going our way is that it's an expensive endeavor, even for the animal rights crowd. And that's probably why you don't see more of them.
Well, the other thing we have going for us is we're right. We have science on our side. We're doing things the proper way. It's just hard to explain that and hard to get people to care about that. But we do have science on our side. So there's that.
Yeah. We don't have just science. We have history. We have 100-year track record we can point to and be like, look, this has worked for 100 and 120 years. Look, more wildlife is around now than was then. It works. They don't have that. They're asking everybody to get on board with a theory that they have, and one that is unsupported and unsustainable from a funding mechanism. I mean, California banned mountain lion hunting by ballot initiative in 1990. Within that ballot initiative was the fact that every cat that was killed due to depredation, which now they kill a ton of them, had to have a necropsy. The places in California are stuffed with frozen cats because they can't get to it because there isn't funding or time to do it. And all of that funding is coming out of the general Fish and Wildlife Fund to pay for these necropsies on these cats that have been killed for depredation. So it's an unsustainable model.
Yeah, that is the other thing that doesn't get shared with the voters so many times in these conversations is just that the cats are still killed. The bears are still killed ultimately. Maybe not that year, but in the years to come, the animals have to be taken off the landscape. It's just not by, hunters who are paying hunting licenses and following hunting regulations to do it. It's by government agencies.
Yeah, exactly. And I call it a proactive versus reactive. Hunting is a proactive approach to keeping these within acceptable ranges and social tolerances. When you take that away, you have a reactive system that goes out when there is a problem cat or a problem bear. But that's not fixing the underlying problem. That's just slapping a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound and taking that one animal off, which is just going to be replaced by another one pretty quickly, because you're at thresholds, and social acceptances. So there's nothing that can be done. Those animals still die.
Yeah, and I think the unfortunate part is that for just the average person, let's say the average non-hunting, non-animal rights person, I don't think that they would want necessarily the government agency to do that, to do that killing. any more than they would want a licensed hunter to do that killing. I don't think that they really care. I think they just want, they want nice wildlife, and they want have the idea of, things in balance, and they want to see good natural resources in their state. So they kind of end up voting for something that they're not actually really getting. They're kind of getting promised this idea, but in the end, the cats are still going to be killed just by an agent instead of you or I.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it really swings, because I've had these conversations. I love going to barbecues or whatever and talking about this stuff. Somebody asks me what I do, start talking, and then they start asking questions, and I start talking to them. And when you tell them, one, that the animals still die by government agents or hired people, but then two, that the animal gets thrown away. They just get tossed. They don't get used. Then people really don't like that, and so it's, I think you're exactly right there, but that's hard to tell on a grand scale. And, it's a tough story, but most people wouldn't support that. But again, they're so far removed that it doesn't really impact them that much. People in the cities aren't being impacted by the mismanagement. They have no consequence. They have no repercussion other than the occasional story that a bear or a cat came into the fringe areas. And then people go, well, we're moving into their homes. Leave them alone. Well, then you hear this diatribe over and over again. And it's like, well, no, actually, that part of town has been there for 100 years. It hasn't been the cats for a long time. What's he doing there? We're up against a hard spot when it comes to some of this messaging.
Yeah. Let's end where we started in Colorado. What happens now? They've got their signatures, but the vote is still far away in November. What sort of process happens between now and then?
Yeah, so they collected the signatures, turned in 188,000 on the nose is what they said. And so now that goes through a verification qualifying process with the Secretary of State. They have to make 124,342 or something like that signatures, a percentage of the people who voted in the last election. And so they will verify and qualify the signatures, and it's going to be close, whether it makes it or not. Historically, 60 to 65% of signatures are qualified. So if you kind of do the math on 188,000 at that upper range of 65%, they're going to come in just under. They could outperform historical averages and get up into that 68%, which then would push them just over 124,000. So it's going to be close, and I think they give a preliminary count here pretty soon, but the final verification count has to be done by August 5th. They have 30 days, I believe, in Colorado to qualify and verify those different signatures. And if they make that 124,300 and whatever, it'll be on the November ballot. And between now and then, it'll be messaging and reaching the right people with the right message.
Yeah, and we have the recent history. You already mentioned it. The wolf reintroduction in the state, that was a ballot initiative too, correct?
Yep, that was a ballot initiative, and that was pushed by these big out-of-state groups. This one's being pushed by Animal Wellness Action and Center for Humane Economy, which is Wayne Pacelli's new groups after he stepped down from Humane Society of the United States. So that's that. I mean, Arizona was done by Humane Society of the United States. The wolf one was too. Montana was smaller groups, but it's all out-of-state money. In Colorado, 200 out of their 288,000 seed money was brought by Animal Wellness Action. And so this is, again, going back to where we started, this is not Coloradans, Arizonans, Montanans. This is not grassroots welling up. This is a nationwide, even global, but nationwide, I don't want to say conspiracy, but it's a nationwide plan of attack that they're undergoing here.
Yeah, just kind of taking it one state at a time, basically, is what you're saying.
Yep, and Wayne Pacelli said that in 1990 when he was at Fund for Animals. He said, we're going to use the democratic process to end hunting species by species, state by state, starting with California. And that's been the roadmap for the last 34 years, and they've been doing it.
And to battle back against this, we do have to rely on grassroots, because that's who's going to do this. The cat hunters in Colorado and the hunters in Colorado, it's going to be on them to do this work if it gets on the ballot in November. So underdog story for sure, but we'll see. We'll see if it ends up on the ballot. Like you say, it seems like it's going to be very close.
Yep, it'll be close and it'll be interesting. And so here we go.
Okay. Well, if it ends up on the ballot, Brian, we should have you back in November to talk about it, or before November to talk about it. But I hope that we don't. I hope that we don't have you back on to talk about it.
Gladly come back to talk about a lot of other things that we got going on. It's a big attack at multiple levels, from the commission to the ballot to the state legislatures. They're hitting on all cylinders with all sorts of messaging and regulations. And it's a big, well-oiled machine that has a lot of star power and a lot of money behind it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of this. And yeah, we'll stay tuned. We'll see what happens in Colorado.
The Outdoor Life podcast is edited by Mike Pedersen of 85 Audio. It's hosted by our editor-in-chief, Alex Robinson, and it's produced by me, executive editor Natalie Krebs. Thanks to Brian Lynn with U.S. Sportsmen's Alliance for walking us through this issue. You can find out more about the Colorado ballot initiative that's in the works at outdoorlife.com/catban. That's CATBAN. Music in this episode was composed and performed by Pierre Locatelli via APM Music.